This is what your rabbit's diet should look like. If you want to find out more, keep watching.
So today we'll be talking about rabbit nutrition. Right? I would like to know, along with a lot of people out there who have rabbits, because I have a friend in particular who feed the rabbit cricks. I call them a murderer, but you can't, come on, you can't feed the rabbit cricks. That is just common sense to me. Rabbits not humans. So I here today myself along with Anessa, and she's going to go through some of the main stuff that rabbits supposed to be feeding on, right? And in our second part of the video, we will go into more in depth into forages, explaining the nutritional values.
Alright, so today we're talking about rabbit feeding, right? There are a variety of things you can feed a rabbit. There are a lot of people who will go based off of what they see rabbits eating in the wild and what they think the rabbit should eat, like giving them cricks, for example. One thing I should point out, you see the feeding your rabbit carrots? Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Alright? You see the whole Bugs Bunny thing that rabbit should eat carrots? You're laughing. I real serious. As a rabbit breeder, it hurts me when people think that they should be giving the rabbit carrots. I'm not saying you can't give a rabbit carrots. You can. But that's not what they should be living off of. In all honesty, if you want to give a rabbit something like carrots, it should be a very small percentage of their diet. Carrots high in sugar, and that's one of the precautions you want to take with rabbits. You want to avoid things with too much water. You want to avoid things with too much sugar. Carrots are high in sugar. You give them a carrot as a treat once a week, maybe about 2 times for the week, if so much that you will offer them carrots. What you can't give them things like carrot tops, because
Carrot tops, what?
When
you cut off the top of the bottom of the carrot, where they sprout out
the green part of the carrot, that when you see it growing in the ground, it's also edible to humans. We could also eat it, but you could give give your rabbit the carrot tops, right? You can give them beet tops as well. I actually love beet tops myself, so I don't actually eat that part myself. But you can't give them beet tops. Radishes, you can give them radish tops as well. You can also give them beets and the radish. Again, but you want to watch your water content and the sugar content on these things, right?
Alright, so my question is, the sugar, the excessive sugar, what it could do to a rabbit?
Understanding is a rabbit's digestive system is highly based on the microbes in their body, right? So the excess sugar disturbs the microbe environment in their stomach. It upsets that little ecosystem going on inside of them with the high sugar content. Aside from that, it will also lead to them building more fat. So they will actually end up having digestive issues, because that microbe colony is what helps them digest their food. So with the excess sugar, you're gonna disrupt the whole balance of how they digest their food, and it can eventually lead to some very negative issues. Right?
Thanks for explaining that.
Right. What you should generally look at, what you need to keep in mind when you're feeding your rabbits, this basically in terms of proportion, this is what we're looking at. You want to give them a nice serving of forages, healthy forages. There are a variety of forages that you can feed. That'll be covered in the next video. If you want, you can also include some concentrate feed, right? And depending on where you live, the concentration, the composition will be different. So you will be looking at a high percentage of forage, a smaller percentage of concentrate, and then your fruits. Your fruits should be a smaller portion of the diet. This is I had watermelon for breakfast this morning. This is the rind of the watermelon. I eat the watermelon and give them the rind. You can do that.
You can't give them the red part. The red part will be very sweet.
It'll be very sweet and also very watery. You want to avoid the excess water because it would lead to diarrhea. Diarrhea could lead potentially to death if it happens in excess, right? So you want to avoid the excess water, especially if you're already providing a constant supply of clean, fresh water to your rabbits. there's no need to give them foods that are high in water. They want to give them the white part. Now the white part is also pretty high in water, but it doesn't have the sugar content as the fruit itself. So you can give them this. Again, these kind of things you want to give them once in a while. I do give my rabbits this when I eat watermelon, but again, once in a while. And they will eat the entire thing, the white and the green. You also want to include some indigestible fiber, and in Trinidad, this is what we give.
I know about roughages that humans eat.
Right.
But this is roughage to a different level.
This is exactly roughage, indigestible fiber, some coconut. And you can give them dry coconut, and you could also give them a young coconut. This was John Dell's breakfast this morning, right? So either one would work, and I can tell you from experience that they would eat this a lot faster than they would the dry coconut.
Of course.
Right? They will eat it. But it's a good idea to make it available to them constantly. Like, you should always have a piece of coconut in their cage. I usually, we just eat coconut often. So I usually, when we eat coconut, cut it up, divide it among them.
Drink coconut.
We just eat the jelly. Alright, we just drink the coconut, my apologies, and we'll eat the jelly, right?
Yeah, they should always just do that today.
Leave me alone, right? So this is something that you also want to include. The downside will give them this. You don't want to give them a whole piece like this.
Cut it up, make it smaller.
Yeah, make it smaller, because if you give them it fresh like this, it will go bad pretty quickly. So you shouldn't give them more than, say, to last 2 days. I think 2 days is a good average for this. If you're giving them dry coconut, you can just leave this in the cage indefinitely until they eat it out, and they would eat.
I guess in this don't reach where it going.
Pretty well, pretty much, right? So, and they would eat this as they see fit. This also helps. These long strands of coconut also helps with removing fur in their stomach. So yeah, so they would end up with fur balls in their stomach. This helps pass it out. Okay. So because if the fur balls stay there and they don't have
to digest properly,
actually their stomach will be clogged, and then they would also avoid eating because mind will tell them that they're full. Sure. Right? So they won't eat, they won't drink, and then they will of course eventually die because they can't consume anymore. Right. So this helps them to pass all that excess fur, and a good indication that your rabbit actually is lacking in digestible fiber is if you see them excessively licking fur, eating their fur. Now they would be licking their fur when they're cleaning, but if you see them there and they're actually looking like they're eating the fur, they're eating like loose fur and thing, it's because they're looking for fiber. So that's what they will do. They will go with the feeling. The fur will feel like indigestible fiber, so they will consume that, thinking that they are benefiting from the fiber because they need it, but when in fact they're actually making the situation worse, right? So this is in an ideal situation, this is what you will look at to feed your rabbits. Situations may not be ideal, and depending on your setup, if you're having a backyard rabbitry, if you have one rabbit as a pet, or if you're doing commercial, what you feed will vary. So for instance, if you have a pet, this is more than likely what you will give them, provided you have access to fresh forages. Right? A lot of people don't, so when they have pets, they will start here and give them concentrate feed.
I guess any concentrate will be the easiest thing to get.
Easiest.
You can animal shop.
Exactly. You can go to a store and tell them you want some rabbit feed, and they will give you. And it's as simple as that. What you want to watch out for, though, another general rule is to not switch brands of feed too often. So in Trinidad we have our two major brands. You don't want to switch between Master Mix and National all of a sudden with your rabbits.
Why?
Because you can't guarantee that the two of them are sourcing their raw ingredients from the same place. You can't guarantee that all of the ingredients have that the feed has the same composition of ingredients.
Okay.
You can't guarantee that the way they process the raw ingredients to make their feed is the same across both companies. And again, because of the rabbit's digestive system, the microbe colony inside there will be upset. Not upset as you get angry, but upset the microbe colony by switching feeds too sudden. So if you use Master Mix, and Master Mix has, for example, it's 80% corn, 10% fiber, the next 10% is just vitamins and minerals. But you switch to national, which has 50% corn, 50% fiber. That drastic change in feed, you can end up getting your rabbit really sick, or you can just see your rabbit drop down suddenly. So what you want to do with when you want to switch feeds is you will have to weed them on it. So if you start with master mix, for example, if you start giving them master mix and hopefully you buy the feed before you run out, and you couldn't, if you end up, they say all they have is national, you say alright, cool, you'll want to give them the first time, say about 80% master mix, which is what they're accustomed to, and then 20% national.
Okay.
Right? And you give them that for 2 days. And then over the course of 2 weeks,
You just increase the next
you
feed
increase the next
slowly.
feed. Exactly. And every day you add some until after a 2-week period, you should be able to give fully national and they will be fine. It's also true with forages. You also want to do the same thing with forages. When you start...
So since it's forages, right? I would call it bush, right?
Okay. City boy kind of thing.
I would be thinking along the lines that it's bush together. You could mix it. You could give them the whole cocktail.
You can't give them the whole cocktail. But if it is, okay, so depending on what you have access to. So if, for example, you have lots of, this is kudzu growing around you, right? This is a vine. If you have this growing around you abundantly, you give it to them abundantly. If it is, you went by a friend and you couldn't really get it, and you just say, you could feed your rabbit mango leaves, and you just decide to throw mango leaves at them, just like that, you may have a problem. I'm not saying that you will in terms of this, but you may have a problem because they were never fed mango leaves before. You don't know how they will react to it, right? So what you'll want to do, if you do want to try them with mango leaves, you give them your kudzu and you include some mango leaves, right? So they will get that kind of balance, and then as well too, if they don't like the mango leaves, they don't eat it and they'll just leave it back. Right? Another thing you'll want to consider is the stage at which your rabbit grows. Your dose would require a different nutrient composition compared to a buck. A buck mostly you're just maintaining, so they'll need a maintenance diet. Those who are pregnant and nursing will require more nutrients because, you know, nursing is going to take more energy. So what I do, I free feed concentrate. I always ensure that nursing those, actually the week before they kindle, I start free feeding them. I ensure that they always have food, right? So they never run, so they can eat freely as much as they like, as much forage as they like, as much concentrate as they like. I always try to ensure that this section here is covered at all times. Most important. You don't want it though being underweight or not producing enough milk and that kind of situation, which could occur if you know you still try to ration your feed. For maintenance, those who are not pregnant and for the bucks, I ration feed. I give them a cup of feed a day. This is a 3 ounce. I weighed it out. I know this is 3 ounces of feed, and this is what they get every day as their ration. A lot of farmers will give, they recommend 4 ounces. I give 3.
So you mind giving the lovely viewers a view of the rest of forages?
I don't mind, but that'll be for the next video. The next video we'll go more in depth in forage feeding. Look out for the next video. It will be linked at the end of this one when it goes live, right? I also free feed fat nuts. So you remember fat nuts from the last one, right?
Yeah.
You know, alright. So fat nuts get free feed because I want them to get as big as possible, as fast as possible. So unlimited feed for them, unlimited feed for nursing those. The thing with our feeds in Trinidad, because our feeds has such a high corn content, it is not the best thing to feed your rabbits. Because corn is starch is sugar, right?
Turns into sugar.
It turns into sugar. So that's something you want to consider. It's not going to be good for your rabbit's digestive health. And aside from that, it also leads to a high proportion of fat in your rabbits. The rabbit's supposed to be a lean animal, lean meat source. you'll end up with a more than normal percentage of fat. No, you can't feed concentrate alone. They would live fine because this is supposed to be a complete meal for your rabbits. It is
a balanced diet.
It's supposed to be, right? It has protein in it, it has fiber in it, it has minerals, it has nutrients, it has salt, which your animals require. You need to ensure that your animals have salt, right? This has all of that. Just that what we have in Trinidad is not what we deem to be the best composition. You would like something with a little more fiber in it and a little less carbohydrates, but this is what we have. And you can't feed them, they will live on this just fine. However, if you do this to your does alone, for instance, you may eventually end up with problems where you'll breed a doe and she never kindles. You'll try her several times and then you'll kill your doe because you'll say, oh, she no good, she ain't give me no babies, yada yada yada. And when you cut her open, you realize how much fat developed in her. Alright, and because of that excess fat, she isn't able to produce the young. She may end up developing GI stasis and suddenly die. She died from GI stasis just simply because of the insufficient quantity of fiber that is in this, which is where this comes in. The coconut, right?
So what about if you probably rip out a few strands, something like that, and you rest it in the feed? That will do?
You probably
to
could.
Compensate?
You probably could. I've never done it, so I can't really talk much about it, but you probably could. If coconut is not something you have a lot of access to, if you get like a coconut core, I suppose, or cocoa peat, you probably could do that, and they would get the indigestible fiber. That's actually a good idea. Right? So, but you could in fact feed them. Feed alone. I feed my fatteners, concentrate alone. Like, okay, it's usually like 95% of the time it will be concentrate alone because again I want them to bulk up as quick as possible. Right? You can't feed forage alone just fine. They will live. However, what I have noticed in my experience is my fatteners, if I give them forage alone, because it's not a high energy source, they would reach to the 5 pounds that I want, but they take a little longer. Right? So if it is you want to do this, you can. If you want to give your breeders grass alone, you can. But again, because when it's time for a doe to kindle her young and feed that young and maintain them to reach the slaughter weight,
you would want to give them some with a little more nutrients.
They need a pack, you need a powerhouse, a little punch, right? So they get more nutrients. This is why I free feed this, right? If it is you don't have access to forages, you'll be fine here. If this you have the land space to feed forage only, you could do that. That is the downside with trying to feed forage only. Unless you have a few rabbits, and I did this when I started out, I did feed forage only, but I only started with 3 rabbits at the time. It was fine. I have the land space to maintain 3 rabbits solely on forage. The minute you start growing, you realize that it becomes difficult to feed forage only because of the quantity of forage that you have to harvest to feed them. They require a lot. Okay. A lot. And aside from that, it also requires more labor output from you. Right? So, if you have the land space and you only have a few rabbits, you by all means feed them forages only. If you are feeding in a commercial setting as well, trying to make a profit, and you're looking to turn over as quickly as possible, this right here will end up pretty well being your main feed, right? It is the most expensive. The forages will be your cheapest option. The concentrate will be your most expensive option. But because of how nutrient dense this is where you'll see the growth rate occurring a lot faster. All right. Yeah? One last thing you want to take into consideration, you want to give your rabbit fresh feed. This would expire and it would tend to get moldy. You don't want to give your rabbit this. When it gets moldy, your rabbit will die.
So when it gets moldy, that is when you know it's bad?
It's bad. Throw it out. You will consider money going down the drain, but you would lose your investment of a rabbit if it gets moldy. If you have rats, and rats come and rats run over your feed, throw it out. If your feed is left out in the open and birds are flying over, throw out the feed. you're gonna get your rabbit sick. Your rabbits are gonna die. Especially if it is a breeder, you know you put out some money to have a good quality breeder. You're gonna take extra precaution with your breeders in particular. If you lose a fattener, you probably won't feel as bad. They only are around for about 4 months. Some of them will be around for 3, but if you have a good growth rate. A breeding rabbit is an investment. Throw the feed. It is cheaper to throw this out
than to lose some breeders.
Than to lose your breeder, right? You don't have your rabbits, any of them, eating moldy feed, contaminated feed. Get rid of it. So, last point. Look out for our forage video. We're gonna go more in depth on feeding forages to your rabbits. So if that's something you're interested in, look out for that video. It will be linked at the end of this video when it goes live.